snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is this super short, very cute short story collection, which is Sweet Home, and it's by Carys Bray. This was very kindly sent to me by the publisher, Windmill Books, who I'll put a link down to below, and I'm so happy that this was sent to me. Basically, I think they are republishing this book with this new cover because it has been published before, and it is an excellent short story collection. I was recommended this by Jen from Jen Campbell. I'll put a link to her channel below, and she said that this is one of her all-time favourite short story collections, so immediately after she said that I really wanted a copy, and as the publisher were very kind and they sent it to me, we did a large group buddy read. I think Eleanor was there, Holly, Jen, Kelly, Mercedes, quite a lot of other people. I'll put links to all of them below, but we all read this together. Some of them are still reading it, but Eleanor and I read it through first and we adored it. Both of us adored it. It was fantastic. Such a good short story collection, and this is giving me so much hope about short story collections because up until this year I never really tried them, and I've now read two and they both got a 5-star rating from me, which is like crazy good. So this is fantastic, utterly fantastic. Also, the cover is just stunning, so that's worth mentioning. What I understand from the author is that Carys Bray was raised as a Mormon. She was very religious when she grew up, and she had a very religious background, and all of her family had been raised that way, and so she had kids fairly young, and she got into a relationship and got married fairly young, and had like, I think 5 children, I might be quite wrong. One of them died when they were fairly young as well, so that really affected her and that really shook her religion. There's an article all about this which I will put a link down to below because it's really interesting to read about, and it's really great for context on these stories and why she wrote them the way she did. But basically she was really affected by it, as anyone would be, and her religion was tested and her resolve was tested, and she started writing, and this is the result of what she wrote. A collection of short stories that had been published in various different things, finally being published together. It's phenomenal. It's only about 170 pages and the text is fairly large within it, so it isn't actually a very difficult read. It's quite an easy one. This is phenomenal though. There are, I think, 17 different stories within this, and out of those 17 I gave 11 of them a 5 out of 5 stars right off the bat, straight away. And then of the other 6 I gave 1 a 3 stars because it was just alright, and the others I gave 4 stars. This is just a beautiful collection though. It's so beautiful. Like, I can't even tell you how much I enjoyed this and why, because it was so raw. I think that's the main thing that came across, was that all of the emotions that she deals with, all of the moments that she deals with are raw, heavy, emotional, deep, intense topics. For example, she deals with a lot of family dynamics within this. She deals with religion, she deals with grief, she deals with mental health, she deals with loss, she deals with all sorts of really intense subjects in a way that you can kind of comment on, you can kind of discuss in a fairly light way. But some of the stories, especially the first 2, are really hard-hitting, and some of them are just emotional from the get-go. Some of them get more emotional the further you go into the story. Some of these stories are as short as 1 page, some of them are a lot longer, but they are a great range of family stories, and I think it's honestly one of the best collections I've ever read. I've only read 2, both of them have been excellent, so that's probably not a good comparison, but I've loved it. And it's definitely inspired me to want to pick up more by Carys Bray. I believe she's got a novel out as well, so I'm definitely going to try and get my hands on that. So we have Everything a Parent Needs to Know, which is a story about how difficult it can be to be a parent, and it's so raw, it's so emotional, it definitely hit me straight away. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can definitely understand where that story was coming from. The things that she was mentioning, the way that you could see the emotion on a child's face and they couldn't hide anything, was something we spoke about in the group, and it was a really wonderfully well written story. Very few pages, but excellently done. The next one in the collection is called Just in Case, and this one again is kind of really disturbing actually. I mean, it's probably the most disturbing one, but it's also so emotional. It's about losing a child, a woman who loses a child, and since she has lost her child, they've died, she really wants to have another child and she wants to look after other people's children, and when she gets her hands on a child she does something that's maybe pretty disturbing. We don't know how the story ends. It's very creepy and there's a lot of potential for danger in that story. It's quite hard-hitting, that one. I'd say that's probably the most hard-hitting story, but it was really thought-provoking. It made you think about how devastating it would be to be in this situation and how you might react, and so I really liked that one. Sweet Home, that was a kind of retelling of Hansel and Gretel, which was really fun. The Rescue was the next one. This one was referencing the Chilean miners, and it was fantastic. I felt like it was such an emotional read because it was dealing with someone who gets involved in drug abuse and can't get out of that spiral and feels like they need to be rescued, and their family, how their family copes with it. That again was just really moving, really hard-hitting story. We then have Wooden Mum, which deals with a family who has a child that has learning difficulties and has a syndrome, and it's kind of about how people don't necessarily always know how to react to that situation. They don't know how to deal with someone who's got a child who's different in some way, and that was really hard hitting as well. Scaling Never is a really fantastic story that I felt was just utterly fabulous. Probably one of my favourites in the collection. I think this is what novel that she has out is based off of, and it's about a young boy who he and his sister play together all the time and they have a great time together, and then his sister unfortunately dies, and it's kind of him dealing with the loss, and it's a very religious family that he's from, and they've always taught him that religion will help them in whatever situation comes along, but then of course something as devastating as a child dying is something you can't really plan for or deal with, and a lot of his family don't know how to cope, whereas he is going around believing that God is going to help them, and it's a really interesting look at how religion might be tested with something as tragic as this going to come up in your life. We then have The Baby Aisle, which is probably the most quirky story within this. It's about a young woman and she is going shopping. She goes to a couple of different places, Waitrose, Asda, all of these different types of shops, and she manages to have a look at the different babies who you can buy from each shop. Some shops you can buy all sorts of babies with very fancy names, in like Waitrose you have the very posh fancy babies, and then if you go to Tesco you maybe have some babies who have more common names, and each baby has like a sell-by date on them, things like that. It's really interesting, very funny, but also very thought-provoking because it kind of talks about how easy it is to have a child and how much responsibility you might actually need when it comes to this. The Countdown, which is a story about, it sort of shows you the man's point of view on pregnancy. I thought that was a really interesting idea and a really interesting point of view she chose to tell it from. We then have Bed Rest, which is about a young woman who has preeclampsia, which is a pregnancy condition, as many of you guys probably know, and how her family react to that. Love, Terms and Conditions is the next story. That one is a fantastic look at how much you have to do to be loved, whether you have rules that you put onto love and the conditions of love. It was really fascinating. It's about a set of grandparents and how when you go to your grandparents you have to behave better than you maybe otherwise would and things like that. Then we have The Ice Baby, which is a really kind of sad, sorrowful story about a couple who want a baby, and the husband in their relationship manages to carve one out of ice, but then he becomes obsessed with this baby and believes it is real. That probably gives you an overall idea of what this is all about. I really, really liked this. I thought it was a fantastic collection. Each of the stories felt unique. They felt like they all had their own voice, but they all tied together as well because they were all dealing with human emotion and raw human emotion a lot of the time. It was utterly flawless in my opinion, and I just was so happy to be sent this free. I would have bought it anyway probably, especially having read it now. I would highly recommend that you do buy it because it's fantastic, and I definitely want to pick up all her other stuff. I think she's got a new book coming out fairly soon as well, which I will definitely keep my eyes open for. But this was fantastic in all ways, and I can't recommend it more highly. So if you guys haven't read this, you haven't read anything by this author, I read this in a couple hours because it is short stories, they're easy to get through, and it's an emotional little roller coaster, and I would love to hear your thoughts if you have read it. So definitely keep your eyes open for this. I believe it comes out fairly soon. I'll put the date down below because I can't remember off the top of my head when it comes out, but I believe it comes out fairly soon, and I would love to hear you guys talking about this or picking it up. Yes, I loved it. It was fantastic. 5 out of 5 stars from me. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about the